Well, hey, good morning, everybody. Like Rich, I missed you too, but I wasn't in Israel. I didn't get to go anywhere quite as cool, but I do appreciate some time away for our family. I enjoyed being able to listen to Stan preach. We just have such an abundance of bright people here and great, incredible voices, and it's nice to be able to find ways to hear other teachings and other perspectives and stuff as we continue down this journey. So last Wednesday night, we packed up our Thanksgiving boxes for our branch out service. So many of you graciously donated a ton of food, more than we even needed. We had to find creative ways to get it to people in need for Thanksgiving so that we could package it up and deliver it to those who were in need. And on top of just the incredible fellowship that happens over that, on top of the service with our hands to bring about that good work, on top of so many other things, it was a great opportunity for me to be able to share with my kids. And I find that continually on our Wednesday nights, on our branch out services. It's a great opportunity for me to talk with and share with my little ones, to talk about mission and service, to talk about the heart of God and what God wants in the world, to talk about serving others and so on. But also for this specific branch out, it gave me the opportunity to talk about the upcoming holiday, to talk about Thanksgiving, what it is that we're going to be doing. And so I was telling them about it. We're going to be having a big meal with a lot of our family, and it's a good reminder to be thankful for the many blessings that we have in this world. But talking to a 2-year-old, you kind of got to come up with creative ways to do that, right? And inevitably, just when I'm talking to Hattie specifically, I reference the toys, right? That's a really easy go-to. I'm talking about her dresses and her stuffies and her dolls, and how many wonderful little things she has because she's been showered by love from y'all, from her mama, from her grandmama, right, everybody. And it's a really easy go-to. But I realized after that conversation, and I think it was still a good teaching moment, I think they still kind of learned a little bit about Thanksgiving and thankfulness. I realized afterwards that it could have been better. Because even though I was trying to speak down for a 2-year-old to an extent, I still think I made it a little bit too shallow even for her, because what I did was I connected thankfulness. I need new batteries. I connected thankfulness to material possessions, right? And we can be thankful for material possessions, but if all we do is connect our Thanksgiving to our material possessions, then we put our Thanksgiving at risk, don't we? Because when all those material possessions fade away, and they will someday fade away, or they might fade away in an instant, should our Thanksgiving fade away too? Absolutely not. Or at least that'd be my answer, is absolutely not. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 tells us to give thanks in all circumstances, because that's God's will for us. He wants us to be thankful. This gratitude, this active, efforted, displayed Thanksgiving, it shouldn't be just some seasonal trend that we participate in. It should be a way of life, right? You probably hear that message every Thanksgiving. I think that's probably a line that I don't on purpose. I didn't go back and check, but that I end up saying every time. It shouldn't be this seasonal trend or this thing that's tied to fleeting, passing things. It should be a way of life. We shouldn't need a holiday to make us thankful. We shouldn't need new things in our lives to make us grateful. We should be filled with thanksgiving for so many things, for every breath that we take, right? For the very beat of the heart in our chest, for the beat in the heart of the chests of the loved ones in our life, whether that's family or friends or whatever they may be, for the beauty of snow and the changing leaves in a field full of flowers and the color of a sunset, right? All these things, these blessings that can't ever really be taken away from us, they should remind us of how thankful we can be that we live in a world where our God is the great gift giver. Not only that, is that great gift giver wants to know us personally and loves us on a very personal, intimate level. And all this goodness that surrounds us every day, and really there is so much goodness that just completely surrounds us every day. It should sustain us towards a life of thankfulness, shouldn't it? At least at a cognitive level, we can say yes, it should. But it doesn't, right? It doesn't. Well, if we're honest with ourselves, we can say that even if we are immersed in subtle blessings that should make us grateful, we're just not a lot of the time. Take the last couple years, for example. Last 2 or more years, our society has been completely thankless. At least my observations would say. We've complained, we've fought, we've disparaged, we've dreaded. It's killed our spirit of thanksgiving. At least, I'm not saying us as the Centerville Church of Christ, but society, our community that we live in at large, its spirit of thanksgiving has been just killed. And look, it's not like the last handful of years haven't been awful. They have been awful, okay? They have been bad. In pretty historic ways, right? And yes, we can lament. We can lament and protest spiritually the brokenness and the pain in our world. But I think that we can still do that while balancing it with an underlying thankfulness, can't we? We should be able to lament and protest pain and brokenness with an underlying balance of thankfulness. And yet what I've seen in the world recently is despair without any gratitude. It hasn't been that balance. Instead of using thankfulness to combat against the darkness, we've let the darkness steal our thankfulness, haven't we? In so many ways, at least in this world at large. It's what I see pervading the world right now. That is the spirit that I see. Not a balance, not a thankfulness, but despair. But as I was writing this, and I guess I was going down my rabbit hole of despair for a little while, I thought about you. And I thought about sharing this message and standing up here in front of a room full of people that don't fit that narrative very well. I see people here right now who have suffered intense medical issues, intense medical pain and hurt over the last year. And yet they share with me how they're still thankful for the things that are going right in their life. I see people who have experienced devastating loss, and yet they tell me that they're still thankful for the God who lifts them up. I see people who aren't really sure how they're going to make it through tomorrow, and yet they're focused on the fact that they're grateful that there will be a tomorrow. These are the outliers in the world, and these are the people that I get to call my brothers and sisters. These are the ones that know God and are able to keep their heads up because they know that there are deeper things that they have received, and they know that they can be grateful for those deeper things. And that's really the point here. When I think about Thanksgiving, I think about a despairing world. The church must be a light, flooding the darkness with thanksgiving specifically. If the world is ever going to discover a foundation of thankfulness, it's going to have to be from Christians. I'm convinced of that. It's going to have to be from the church. It's us who is going to have to help cultivate that mentality. And that's really part of our mission, right? We've talked about mission a lot over the last couple years. We stand in this world as prophetic priests, okay? Prophetic priests. As prophets, we confront the world with a new thing from God, all right? Sometimes when we think prophets, we always think about sharing the future. Okay, that's like 20% of what the prophets do in the Bible, okay? When prophets, we confront the world with something new from God. And here, that's a thankfulness in the face of despair. And as priests, we mediate worship and praise back up to God from his creation. And we do that by offering thanksgiving as representatives in the world. This is a privilege and a responsibility that we have to be prophets and priests of thanksgiving in a largely unthankful world. Now, I'm not saying we have to be the people who are so thankful it's annoying. You know those people, right? They're just, everything is great, and they're so thankful for everything, and it's like, okay, if you say so, right? I'm not saying we have to be that, because sometimes that comes off as, sometimes if we force ourselves into that, we show an inauthenticity. But part of being on mission for God, part of being a light in the darkness, it includes sharing the gospel. It includes making the world a better place. But part of it is being thankful. Part of it is being thankful in an unthankful world. And yeah, that's going to be difficult at times. We've already mentioned that these last 2 years have been a trying time, and it weighs on our ability to be thankful. At least it has on mine at times in the last 2 years or more. I imagine it's been that way for you as well. It can feel more like a challenge than a privilege. but that's nothing new either, okay? That's nothing new. It's been that way since the beginning, and Scripture even speaks to it. I want to share this positive psalm. It's a positive psalm that I think kind of offers to us on a platter a little bit of a subtle hint that it's not always easy to be thankful. And this is Psalm 50. But giving thanks is a sacrifice that truly honors me. If you keep to my path, I will reveal to you the salvation of God. This is from the words of God here. On a surface level, it seems like a nice little psalm that expresses that the value that God puts on Thanksgiving, right? That God honors, that when you give thanks, it truly honors God. But notice the word choices with me a bit, okay? Notice the word choice. The psalmist describes giving thanks as being a sacrifice to God. Now, some of your translations might say offer thanksgiving to God, or give thanks as an offering to God. But I dug into the Hebrew a little bit, and I do Greek, I don't do a ton of Hebrew. But when I did, sacrifice really does seem like the best translation for this, right? Remember, a sacrifice is something that cost us, doesn't it? It's something that costs us. When I give my wife a kiss, it's not a sacrifice I have to make, okay? When I give my wife a foot rub, that's a sacrifice I have to make, all right? I got weak thumbs or something. I don't like giving foot rubs. Okay, one of those is a sacrifice and the other is not. The psalmist understands that giving thanks is not always easy. It's not always done in this supernatural way. Sometimes it's a sacrificial act that we do because we know that it both honors God, it blesses us, and it edifies others, right? Sometimes it's a sacrificial act that we push ourselves to do because it honors God. It does, in the end, bless us, and it edifies others. And that's the reality of it. But at the same time, Thanksgiving shouldn't always be some arduous chore that we have to do. There are seasons it will be a sacrifice to do, but it shouldn't always be some arduous chore. In 1988, there was a Polish railway worker named Jan Grzebski, I think. He was hit by a train while on duty in 1998, Jan Grzebski, and he survived, but he was in a coma for 19 years. Just imagine, 19 years in a coma. And as you can imagine, when he woke up almost 2 decades later, in 2007, it was quite a bit of a shock. Consider the differences that happened from the late 80s to the late zeros, or whatever you want to call that decade, right? Computers, internet, cell phones, even on the verge of smartphones right about then as well. So much had improved for the better. Not least of which was the condition of Poland himself. When he went into a coma, Poland was under the oppression of the Soviet Union. They were having to ration the daily essentials of life, like food and whatnot. But when he woke up, Poland was a democratic nation that had the most wealth that country had seen in generations. And there were so many goods on the shelf that would have been unimaginable when he went into his coma, and so on. He had so much excitement. And so you can just imagine how much blessing he would see in this new world after waking up after so many years. But when news stations and others interviewed him, and they were kind of asking these questions that we all would have, he actually expressed a little, on top of the amazement, expressed a little bit of disappointment at seeing so many people who were just complaining and despairing and grumbling about the world they lived in. Right? What he was experiencing afresh was so wonderful and so great. And yet the people around him had become completely blind to it. They didn't have eyes to see the abundant thankfulness that was around them. There are hard times. We have legitimate, difficult situations that make being thankful hard, like I just said. But I wonder how often we've simply become complacent or oblivious to the sheer abundance of goodness all around us, right? Sometimes it's hard, and it's legitimately hard. Sometimes we've just become distracted and blind to the blessings around us. Do we simply just become numb to how blessed that we are that we forget to stop and say, thank you. It reminds me of a story in the Gospel of Luke, and I'll read this here. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. When he saw them, he said, Go, show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, Rise and go, your faith has made you well. How many were made well? 10. And I would assume all 10 had faith too. But only one stopped to show his gratitude. How easy is it for us to forget to stop and say thank you? Even from like a kid, I remember reading this story and wondering, or maybe even assuming, that those other 9 lepers said a prayer of thanksgiving to God on their way. I assume they did, actually. That is my assumption behind the story. I think that they probably did. They clearly knew who Jesus was. Jesus said that it was their faith that made them healed and made them well. So they must have had enough conviction that they would praise God for their healing. But if they did, and like I said, I kind of think they did it while running back to their lives. Which, I mean, like, I completely understand that. These people, who knows how long these people have been separated from their friends, their families, their communities. I would understand them booking it to get back to their full and abundant life that God desires for them, right? I think that they probably offered prayers of thanksgiving along the way. But this one Samaritan is commended. This one Samaritan is remembered for thousands of years because he didn't just say a quick little thank you on his way. He stopped. And he went out of his way. He returned to a place that he would have associated with misery to praise God in thanksgiving, right? And I think that's the key. If you ask me, I think that's really the key. Are we technically thankful, or are we actively living a life of thanksgiving? Are we well on our way and say a little prayer of thanks as we go, or do we stop? Do we fall to our knees and shout in a loud voice, thanksgiving and praise? Or maybe we're not thankful at all. You know, you see these stereotypical spoiled kids on the movies, right? Who get a gift and all they can focus on is the damaged packaging or that it's in the wrong color or whatever. And I just think, man, I know people who live life like that. And what an exhausting way to go through life. Ultimately, it takes training to cultivate a thankful perspective in life. Like everything else, it takes building habits, it takes practice, it takes training ourselves so we can grow into genuinely grateful people. And so, you know, this morning as we go into our Thanksgiving week, I wanted to offer just a few tangible, simple things you can do, maybe over this holiday season or whenever, to help us grow and cultivate that thankful spirit. And so one of them is just, this is as simple as it gets, and you've heard this since you were a kid, right? Make a list of the things you're thankful for. Make 100, though. You can do 10 things over 10 different days, but force yourself to reflect at a prolonged level on the blessings in your life. I think everybody had to do this in like 3rd grade or whatever, but how long has it been since you did it? Like, wrote it down or typed it into your notes app on your phone, I don't care. But like, put it down somewhere, not just thought of it in passing, but manifested it. 50, 100 blessings. You will find, and like maybe where you're at right now, you don't think you have 100 things to be thankful for. Mentor of mine did this after a really hard season in life, and he started with indoor plumbing. Start there, okay? Right? There are 100 things, and I think the journey of reflecting at this deep level will help us get to that, take that step. Take some time in prayer, but only offer thanksgiving in that prayer. Whether it's in the morning or the evening, have a little prayer session where you only offer words of thanks to God. Now, we all got requests. We all got other things we want to talk to God. Save that for a different prayer session, okay? Just take one where all you're doing to God is thanking him, and let that shape your mind. And then just a third one for this morning. Write a couple thank you cards this week. All right? Not because someone gave you a gift or somebody helped you move or do something like that. Just a random, impromptu card of gratitude for someone who blesses your life. Stop and verbalize. I guess not verbalizing if you write it on a letter. I don't know. An English teacher can tell me that. But write it down. Make the feelings of gratitude communicable and share them with somebody else. I'm sure if you can think of a lot of other ideas here. But the idea is you put in the effort, and the gratefulness will start to flow more and more and more. And you'll begin, the goal here is that you would begin to choose to celebrate what you have instead of pout about what you don't have, right? To start to see the gifts instead of the grievances. To find yourself focusing on the good rather than be consumed with the bad. And maybe at the end, discovering rest instead of discontentment. Because at the end of the day, gratitude is a choice. I believe that. Gratitude is a choice. It's a path wide open for us to take. The secret to finding that path, though, the secret to making that decision, I believe, is knowing Christ. And knowing that the best things in life, the most thankful things, are already ours. And taking joy in that. In him alone, we have all that we could ever need, and that's something to be thankful for. If you're here this morning and you're ready to give your life over to Christ, to let him fill your heart with more blessings than you could ever begin to count, we invite you to do that now as we stand and as we sing.